I will take it up. Just a minute. So, are you able to view the slides? Okay. So, in the last class, we have gone through the definition of residues, what are the types of residues, and why we are going for pesticide residue analysis, and the terminologies. And here we took actually it's only 2 slides, and we took more than 1 hour to describe all those things. And we discussed up to food factor, theoretical max. I think last class up to I think maximum permissible intake where we had stopped. Do you remember, Rahul, Shikha, and Abhishek? Where our calculation was stopped. Anyone? Theoretical dietary intake. Okay, theoretical maximum daily intake. Okay, fine. So what we discussed was uh, based on the, okay, we discussed about the weight of Shikha and weight of compared the weight of Rahul, and compared the quantity of pesticide that can be consumed. Like that we calculated it. And now theoretical maximum daily, I will repeat that again. Theoretical maximum daily intake means that if a pesticide is recommended in, say, quinalphos, I think we took the example of quinalphos. If quinalphos is recommended in, say, 30 commodities, food commodities, and if you are consuming all the 30 in a day as per our dietary pattern, we have for to calculate that, we will work out a food factor. That means what is the fraction of that particular commodity in our total diet. That means I have given consider it's just a hypothetical scenario. If a person is consuming 1.35 kg of food, total food per day, and if we imagine that that person consumes half a kg of cereals, say rice, then the food factor for cereals is 1.5 by 1.5. Here I have given 1 kg. Nobody consumes 1 kg. So you consider if the total diet daily. I will take an example itself. So, anyone, do you have an idea of what is the quantity of food you consume per day? Rough idea. Total weight, including breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the snacks you take in between. Roughly, I'm not asking about exact value. 700. Oh, Abhishek, okay, we will take it 1,000. We will take a round figure. So, Abhishek, I'm asking you the next question. What will be the quantity of rice you consume among this? Among the 1,000 gram, what will be the quantity of rice? So the food factor for rice is 400 divided by 1,000. So among your total diet, 400 divided by 1,000 is the food factor for rice. So we will take that food factor. That means we are taking, in order to calculate theoretical maximum daily intake, the acceptable daily intake is calculated based on milligram per kg body weight per day, and MRL is based on ppm, that is milligram per kg. So if the MRL is say 1 ppm. If the MRL of quinalphos in rice is 1 ppm, that means 1 milligram in a kg of rice is the quantity that is allowed. If we are considering the food factor, we are not consuming 1 kg of rice, we are consuming only 400 gram. So we will be taking the food factor and multiplying it with that. So roughly it will come to around 0.4 gram of quinalphos only we will be consuming daily. If you are consuming 400 gram of rice containing quinalphos at the MRL level, that is 1 ppm, then we are not consuming 1 kg, we are consuming only 400 gram. So we are calculating the food factor and applying it that. So like that, quinalphos can be applied in 29 other commodities. We said that quinalphos is recommended in 29 other commodities, 30 commodities, and rice is one thing. And chili, we may be consuming only meager quantity, we may be consuming hardly 5 gram or 10 gram. Then based on the food factor, that is, if it is consuming 10 gram of chili per day, then 10 divided by 1000, and that factor will be added. We will calculate how much quantity of take the MRL of quinalphos in chili. Say quinalphos in MRL of quinalphos in chili is again 1 gram. Then we will calculate it based on the residue, that is the MRL into food factor, that is MRL is equal to 1 into 10 divided by 1000. So like that we calculate all the commodities, all the 30 commodities together. That is the theoretical maximum daily intake. We call it as theoretical because we assume that all the 30 commodities we are consuming in a day, and all the 30 commodities are having pesticides, that is quinalphos, at MRL. Understood? Are you clear with that? Yes or no? Are you clear with that theoretical maximum daily intake concept? If not, I will repeat it again. Yes. Others? Rahul, Sri Lakshmi. Voice is break. ഒന്നുകൂടി പറയണം. ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ. എന്റെ വോയിസ് ബ്രേക്ക് ആവുന്നുണ്ടോ? ഓക്കെ, ഒരു മിനിറ്റ് ഞാൻ എന്റെ വൈഫൈ ഒന്ന് മാറ്റട്ടെ. ഇപ്പൊ കണക്ഷൻ ശരിയല്ലേ? ഓക്കെ ആണോ സൗണ്ട്? Okay, I will repeat. Theoretical maximum daily intake. What we do is, imagine quinalphos. We are taking the calculating the theoretical maximum daily intake of quinalphos. In the case of quinalphos and theoretical, if we are calculating theoretical maximum daily intake, and quinalphos in India, it is recommended for application in 30 crops, 30 commodities. It is recommended, and we have MRL for 30 commodities. So theoretical maximum daily intake, what we assume that all the 30 commodities will have the pesticides at the MRL level, and a person will consume all the 30 commodities in a day, though it may not happen, because quinalphos may be recommended in brinjal, it may be recommended in bindi, it may be recommended in bitter gourd, it may be recommended in say vegetables such as cabbage, cauliflower, etc. But you may not be consuming all these vegetables in a day. You may be consuming only cabbage in a day, may be consuming only cucurbits, say bitter gourd in a day, or brinjal in a day. You may not be consuming all these vegetables in a day. But even then, we will assume that we are consuming all the 30 commodities in a day. And all these 30 commodities are having the pesticides at the level of MRL, which we have worked out. That is based on earlier we have studied how MRL is worked out. This much is clear. This is theoretical. That is assumption. That's why it is called as theoretical maximum daily intake. Is that much clear? Yes. Okay. Fine. So then one thing we have to consider is that MRL is milligram per kg. MRL is ppm. ppm means milligram per kg. So MRL, what we say is that say MRL of all the 30 commodities is 1 ppm. Imagine it won't be, it will be 1, it can be 0.1, it can be 0.01, it can be 10. So it can vary. So imagine for all the 30 commodities, Quinalphos is having an MRL of 1 ppm. If that is so, we are not consuming all the 30 commodities 1 kg each. No. As Abhishek has told earlier, he consumes a diet of 1 kg per day, total diet. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and all the snacks together, he consumes 1 kg. So the total diet is 1 kg per day. And of that 1 kg, he is consuming only 400 grams of rice and remaining similar, little bit other things, and that constitutes the rest 600 grams. So here we have to calculate the food factor. How much quantity, what is the proportion of a particular commodity that constitute your total diet? So that means in a total diet of 1 kg, 400 rice occupies 400 gram. That is 40% is occupied by rice. So that is the food factor. So what we will calculate is the MRL is 1 ppm, MRL into the 400 divided by 1000. That is food factor. Understood? That is theoretical maximum daily intake. Food factor is 400 divided by 1000 is food factor. If you multiply it by MRL, then it will become theoretical maximum daily intake. That is for rice. Is it clear up to that point? Okay. Then next thing is we have calculated for rice. So Abhishek consumes 1 kg of diet per day, and he among his diet only chili. We have a MRL for chili for Quinalphos, and among the commodities, chili he consumes hardly 10 gram per day. So what will be his food factor? What will be the food factor for chili? If he consumes 10 gram of chili per day, then what will be the food factor? Hmm? No answers? Still you are not. 10 divided by, yes, that is 0.0. What about others? 10 divided by 1000. Yes, yes. 10 divided by 0.01. So that is the food factor into MRL 0.01 into 1. So that will be 0.01. So for all the 30 commodities, we will add all the values. Calculate the MRL. We have the MRL. Calculate the food factor. And add all the for all the 30 commodities together, we will get the theoretical maximum daily intake for Quinalphos. Understood? Any doubts still persisting? Srisha is not here. Srishയുടെ connectivity പോയോ? ഇല്ലേ ശ്രീഷ ഇല്ലേ? ഇല്ലെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു. റേഞ്ച് പ്രോബ്ലം ഉണ്ടെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. Okay. Then Shiga, are you clear? Yes, okay. So we calculated theoretical maximum daily intake for quinolphos. So remember, this is theoretical. As I already told, we may not consume all the 30 commodities in a day. And what theoretically what we will do is, we have nationally, we have the average diet consumption for a person. For an Indian citizen, what is the average Abhishek told 1 kg, but there are several persons who may not able to take even a single meal. So our average consumption is way below that for Indian citizens. So they will take the average, and among the average, what will be the composition of rice, what will be the composition of bindi. We have a calculation for that. Then based on that only we calculate. That's a theoretical calculation, not actual calculation. So that we calculate theoretical maximum daily intake. And if we calculate the theoretical maximum daily intake, and if that is less than maximum permissible intake, if you remember what is maximum permissible intake, maximum permissible intake is acceptable daily intake into average body weight. So if you have already calculated maximum permissible intake, and if your theoretical maximum daily intake is less than your maximum permissible intake, then whatever value you have got, the residue you have got following good agriculture practices is fixed as MRL. I will repeat. Theoretical maximum daily intake, you calculated all the 30 commodities and you got a value of say 5 ppm. And the MPA, maximum permissible index, that is ADA into your body weight, is 10. Then that is theoretical maximum daily intake 5 ppm, and the MPA is 10 ppm. So TMDA, theoretical maximum daily intake, is less than MPA. So whatever the residue present in the commodity, we can fix it as MRL. Here I taken the example of quinolphos, but this calculation will come whenever we are recommending pesticide in a new commodity, or whenever we are introducing a new pesticide. We calculate the MPI, we calculate theoretical maximum daily intake, and then in order to fix the MRL, we calculate all those things. But consider, if your theoretical maximum daily intake is greater than MPA, that means if you have calculated theoretical maximum daily intake is 11 ppm and MPA is 10, then we have to recalculate all the thing. That means maximum permissible intake, that is fixed, we can't change. We have calculated ADI, then based on the ADI and average body weight, we got MPA. That is fixed, we can't change that. But we can change theoretical maximum daily intake. How? One possibility is we can reduce the dose of the pesticide so that the residue level can decrease. But that's not an easy option. Another scenario is you can increase the waiting period, pre-harvest interval. What will happen if you increase the waiting period? See, you calculate the MRL and based on the waiting period as 3. That means you sprayed the commodity today and harvested the commodity after 3 days and calculated the maximum residue limit, and you got a level of residue, and you calculated TMDA and maximum permissible intake and all, and then you found out that TMDA is greater than MPA. What options can we adopt to avoid this scenario? Any idea? Increase in the weight. Yes, Abhishek is correct. We can increase the waiting period, because if we are going for 3 days, anyway, invariably residue level will be high. If we increase the waiting period, of avoiding that particular commodity for consumption, that I will come to later. But what you answered the first, I will explain it first. Increase the waiting period 3 to 5 days or 7 days. Invariably, the residue will decrease. Invariably, the residue will decrease. So, if the residue decrease, then if we calculate the theoretical maximum daily intake, see theoretical maximum daily intake. Just a minute, I have got a call. Sorry. If we increase the waiting period, invariably the residue will decrease in the commodity. So the theoretical maximum daily intake value will also decrease. We are calculating theoretical maximum daily intake based on good agriculture practices. MRL is good agriculture practice. Good agriculture practice means what we are recommending the farmer is that yes, if you are spraying a pesticide, you have to harvest following waiting period. So that is one thing. So the farmer is following waiting period. So that means after 7 days only he is harvesting. So that's one way to do avoid if we have a problem like that, if TMD is higher than MPA. And one way companies try to avoid is have anyone seen the label of chlorantraniliprole, either granule or SC formulation? Has someone seen that? Coragen, yes. No. Abhishek, have you seen the waiting period for rice in Coragen's bottle? No. If you see the waiting period for Coragen in rice, it is, I think it is 55 days. And for a vegetable such as bitter gourd, it is something about 5 days. So remember, the waiting period for the same chemical in rice is 55 days, but it is 5 days in a vegetable. So in good agriculture practice, so what when rice chlorantraniliprole Coragen is recommended for the management of stem borer and leaf folder. So up to what stage of the crop these two pests can cause damage? Say if you have a leaf folder infestation after the panicle emergence, once the grain filling has started, is it advisable to go for a milky dough stage? Is it advisable? Say Abhishek has given milky stage. After milky stage, if you are having some stem leaf folder infestation, is it advisable to go for a pesticide spray? According to good agriculture practice? No, it's not. So that means good agriculture practices. Here, this should be a pesticide application should be based on sound scientific principles. So that's the way we should go for. So normally a pesticide, especially for stem borer and all, it is recommended at the say we observe dead heart as the symptom of stem borer. But the symptom of dead heart, once you see in the field, the damage has already been occurred. And if you see whatever the pesticide you spray after seeing a dead heart, not dead heart, it's white ear, sorry. After seeing, observing a white ear in the field, then it may not correct it because already the panicle has emerged, nothing can be done. But if you apply the pesticide 2 or 3 weeks before, then it must have prevented the formation of a white ear. So that's why we have a pre-harvest interval of 55 days. Another example I will give. I take the case of early shoot bore in sugarcane. In early shoot bore of sugarcane, at what stage of the crop it attacks? Sugarcane. Do you remember the pests of sugarcane? Anyone? Budding stage? No. Up to 3 month old. Yes, it is up to 3 month old. 1 to 3 month old. The pre-harvest first 1 to 3. That is 1 to 3 month old. Here, chlorantraniliprole is having a waiting. If I remember it correctly, it is having a waiting period of 300 days in sugarcane against early shoot borer. I repeat, chlorantraniliprole is having a waiting period of 300 days in sugarcane against early shoot borer. That doesn't means that the residue is persisting in sugarcane for 300 days. No. We are recommending chlorantraniliprole for the management of early shoot borer, and this early shoot borer occurs in the first 1 to 3 months, and after that we won't get early shoot borer. So if a person sprays the pesticide in 5th month for the management of early shoot borer, it's not good agriculture practice because we don't have early shoot borer in the 5th month. It's only in the first 3 months. The duration of sugarcane is 1 year. So that's why we have a pre-harvest interval like that. So companies, what it will do is, for rice, if we calculate the residue in of chlorantraniliprole as per the recommended dose, say 3 ml per 10 liter, we don't usually get residues beyond 10 to 15 days. It will be zero. So if they are fixing the pre-harvest interval as 55 days or 50 days, what it is, invariably the residue will be zero. So the theoretical maximum daily intake, the MRL value, whenever we fix this, it will be the lowest level of detection. We can't fix it at zero. That's also one thing, because normally we have a term called as limit of detection. Limit of detection means the lowest level at which an instrument can detect a particular pesticide. That is with respect to instrument. അതായത് ഒരു ഇൻസ്ട്രുമെന്റിന് ഏറ്റവും കുറഞ്ഞ അളവ് എത്രയാണോ ഡിറ്റക്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്, the lowest level that can be detected by an instrument. If it discover a new instrument which can detect extremely low quantity, then that limit of detection will come down. But nowadays most of the equipment has a limit of detection of 0.01 ppm. So even though the residue is below zero, if the residue is zero, it is given as 0.01 percentage because we don't know whether it is present or not. So it is normally given as 0.01 ppm. So that's how the companies calculate all those things. Not only companies, the regulatory bodies also. So this is with respect to the calculation of MRL, waiting period, and theoretical maximum daily intake. Are you clear up to this point? If someone needs an explanation, more explanation, I am ready to do that, because you should be thorough with this concept. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് സംശയങ്ങളുണ്ട്, if you have some doubt, you can unmute and ask. Don't try to type it all the things, because sometimes you may not be able to express it. Anything? Why no response?
Okay.
Okay. Abhishek? Clear. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Then comes usually few terms are also included in this pesticide residue analysis, but this is mainly with respect to toxicological aspect, not pesticide residue. And just for your information only, I am included that concept, acute reference dose. Whatever we are calculating the ADA and all, that is chronic toxicity. That means every day we are giving a particular quantity of a pesticide and we are checking for the adverse effect. But somehow, if a person consumes a huge quantity of a pesticide accidentally in a particular day, so here we comes the acute reference dose. There we are calculating the chronic effect. Here we are calculating the acute reference dose. Acute reference dose, it is an estimate of substance in food or drinking water that can be ingested over a short period of time, usually during one meal or day, without appreciable health risk to consumer. Here the difference between ADA and acute reference dose is that is not ADA, no observed adverse effect level, and acute reference dose is that here in no observed adverse effect level we are consuming throughout the life period. That means every day throughout the life period. In acute reference, that is chronic. In acute reference dose, we are consuming it in a particular day, and what is without any appreciable health risk, that is acute reference dose. That is acute reference dose. This is just for your information. Sometimes I have seen it in, asked in SRF and something, that's why I given it. Okay, so I will request all of you, I will upload this video today in Moodle. So go through these videos, the first video which we have uploaded earlier and today's video. Go through this again, clear the concept first, because hardly we have discussed for about 2 hours. We have hardly discussed 6 slides, not more than that. But remember, this is the crux of pesticide residue. I have taken this much time only because you have to be crystal clear about the basic concepts in pesticide residue, or the science of toxicology behind it. Okay. So then coming to the this is a flow chart how we fix an MRL. This is first a supervised field trial. I told you ANP on pesticide residues does it. And if we have got 25 or 30 locations, what is the maximum residue? And from the maximum residue we calculate theoretical maximum daily intake based on the food factor in that particular commodity. So a supervised field trial we conduct in a particular commodity, and based on the food factor of that commodity and based on the MRR value, we calculate theoretical maximum daily intake. And in the same time, we work out toxicological studies. No observed adverse effect level we work out in test animals. ADA, we apply the safety factor of 100, that is NOAL divided by 100, we got ADA, and we multiply it into the average body weight, we got maximum permissible intake. we check the TMDA value and maximum permissible intake. If TMDA value is less than maximum permissible intake, okay, there is no issue. We can recommend that MRL as the MRL for that particular commodity. If it is greater than MPA, we have to rework it. Either we should not recommend that pesticide, or we should rework. We should change adjust the pre-harvest interval and all, and check whether it is can be recommended or not. And with respect to this chart, globally, what this toxicological studies, it is carried out by WHO, World Health Organization, and the supervised field trials, MRL, theoretical maximum daily intake, and all those are conducted by FAO. I will repeat: toxicological studies by World Health Organization and MRL fixation by FAO. And this FAO and WHO officials sit together in a meeting called as JMPR, Joint FAO WHO meeting on pesticide residue. So the officials of FAO and WHO come together in a meeting called Joint FAO WHO meeting on pesticide residue. They discuss the ADA worked out by WHO and MRL worked out by FAO and fix the MRL and ADA. This is for global trade. And this JMPR, this Joint FAO WHO meeting on pesticide residues, is under Codex Alimentarius Commission. This is the committee, this is the organization established by FAO and WHO for fixation of MRL for international trade. And for under the Codex Alimentarius Commission, this meeting is actually that fixes the MRL. But the sad thing is that the MRL fixed by Codex Alimentarius Commission for international trade is not at all accepted by any country. Each country fixes its own MRL. Though we have an international organization, non-partisan organization fixing an MRL, none of the countries accepts that MRL for international trade. They argue that our dietary pattern is different, so I have my own MRL. Say Indians will say that we are consuming lot of wheat and rice, so our MRL should be different from Europeans where they consume more of meat, vegetables, etc. So the MRL should be different. But that MRL for the major drawback of country specific MRL is that each country fixes MRL arbitrarily to avoid trade. So that's the scenario now. Nobody accepts Codex Alimentarius Commission MRL. And in India, our MRL is fixed by Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. In FSSAI, ICR is also a part of, just like FAA is part of that. In FSSAI, ICR is also a part of it. And ICR gives out the MRL data, residue data, and FSSAI work out the pre-harvest interval and MRL and all. Okay. So up to this, clear? Okay. Then next, I will go to the pesticide residue analysis. This part may be a bit easy for you. What are the steps in pesticide residue analysis? Earlier part was theoretical. Now we come to the actual practice of pesticide residue analysis. The steps in pesticide residue analysis include experimentation, sampling, extraction, cleanup, analysis, and interpretation of data. I'm repeating: experimentation, sampling, extraction, cleanup, analysis, and interpretation of residue data. And here, experimentation is not always a part of pesticide residue analysis. Experimentation is there only if you are carrying out some MRL studies in our laboratory ecosystem. Otherwise, usually the pesticide residue analysis steps include sampling, extraction, cleanup, analysis, and interpretation of data. Experimentation in our lab, our Vellanikara lab doesn't go for experimentation, except for, say, earlier for Anusri's work we did for experimentation. Otherwise, we don't go for experimentation. But Vellani lab, since it is an ANP lab, they go for experimentation also. But if they most of their work is with the second step onwards, sampling, extraction, cleanup, analysis, and interpretation of residue data. We will come to it one by one. Experimentation. I told you we have to work out the MRL. If we have to work out the MRL, then we have to go for experimentation. Just like a randomized replicated trial, we have to lay out a trial. We what we will do is, say if we have a particular pesticide, say a new pesticide is introduced into the market, and the company wants to calculate the MRL. That SAM pesticide sample will be given to all the ANP centers, and they will give the particular pesticide. They will grow that particular. The company may be recommending it against, say, brinjal. So brinjal will be grown in CRD or RBD. Mostly it will be RBD, not CRD. It will be a randomized block trial only. So we will take replicated field trial with replications and randomization, all the degrees of freedom calculations, and also all will be there will be control plot. And one thing that normally differentiates the layout of pesticide residue analysis experimental plot is that the space between two plots will be far wider. Usually we give a space of 60 centimeter between two plots in an RBD whenever we are going for a field trial. But here we may go for 1 meter or 2 meter, because care should be taken that the drift from one plot should not fall on the neighboring plot. So in order to avoid drift, we will give a wider spacing. That's the only difference in experimentation scenario of pesticide residue analysis. And one more thing is that usually the dose is, the company will advise, give whenever they are giving a product for testing, they will say that this is the dose which we should use, and there will be invariably another dose which will be fixed, that is 2 times the recommended dose. So company is recommending it is 2 ml per liter. Then in the experimental field we will be giving a next another dose we will use, that is 2 into 2 times the dose, that is 2 into 2. The recommended dose is 2 ml per liter. 2 times the recommended dose, that will be 4 ml per liter. Why we are going for 2 times the recommended dose is that somehow, even though we are recommending 2 ml per liter, we know our farmers. The farmers will go for, if you are recommending 2, farmers will go, take 3 ml, or some persons will go for 4 ml per liter. So what will be the maximum residue limit if the farmer is going for double the dose? So that's why we go for the double dose, and this will also help us to understand whether there is any phytotoxicity or not. So that is with respect to experimentation. Experimentation is nothing but our RBD. We don't go for normally CRD trials, RBD trials only, and invariably there will be control plot. And difference is that with normal field trial is that there will be wider spacing between the plots. And coming to the next, sampling. Here is the norm, that is the normal step which we adopt in pesticide residue analysis. The sampling method, the purpose of sampling is to draw representative sample from a population. That you know, you as might have studied about sampling. To draw representative sample from a population. We can't say we have a truckload of vegetables, say 10 ton of vegetables, and we can't analyze all the 10 tons to determine the residue from of this particular commodity. So what we will do is, we will draw a sample from that 10 ton, and we analyze it, and we will say that the residue in this 10 ton is this much. That is based on the sample drawn from that 10 ton, and we have not analyzed the entire 10 tons of commodity. We have analyzed only a small sample, and that result is applicable to the entire population. So that is sampling, and we go for drawing few individuals from a population, and we will apply the result to the entire population. So this is a sample. Normally, this is the step at which we normally start a pesticide residue analysis. We go to a particular field or a shop, vegetable shop. We draw sample from the field or pesticide shop. We randomly choose the commodity. But whenever we are going for a sample collection from a field, we have to make sure certain things. Say if a farmer is going two different varieties of vegetables. Uh, have you seen bitter gourd variety called Maya? Have you seen that? Yes, hybrid. Yes. What is the difference between Maya and Preeti, the normal variety from KU? White, white color. Yes, Preeti is also white, but Maya is color. No, that's not the major difference. Maya, the spines are not that prominent. While Preeti, the spines are extremely prominent and more spiny in nature. Here, Maya, though there are spines, it's not at all prominent, and the number of spines is also less. So, what makes a difference is that the chances of residues getting inside the spines is very less in the case of Maya. But in the case of more spiny Preeti, the chances of residue remaining inside those spines are more. So the residue levels in Preeti may be more and Maya may be less. And I'll take another example is brinjal variety. We have white colored variety, we have violet colored variety, we have green colored variety. And if a farmer is going all the three kinds of varieties, a white colored brinjal variety, a violet colored one, and a green colored one, then we have to sample all the three varieties separately. And if a farmer is going Preeti and Maya together, we have to sample Preeti separately and Maya separately. So different varieties should be sampled separately. That's one criteria. And if a farmer has gone for different pesticide sprays in different area, invariably we have to sample it differently. So one farmer started the pesticide application with fipronil. After completing one area, the fipronil what you have purchased has finished and he has left with chlorpyrifos. The remaining area he sprayed with chlorpyrifos. So discuss with farmer what all the pesticides which we have sprayed. If we have sprayed uniformly, okay, fine. Entire area can be sampled together. But if you have gone, he has gone for two different commodities, you have to sample it separately. Another difference is that if the areas, if sometimes if the farmer might have sprayed one area today and he couldn't complete it the spraying operation today because of some engagement, and he continued the spraying in the next day, then again you have to sample it separately. So sampling is extremely critical. Otherwise, your entire results can vary. So you should be careful about the sampling. Then only you will get a pukka result. And once you have collected the sample, okay, I will send some of you for collecting the samples. And the farmer is growing pumpkins and ash gourds. So each pumpkin is weighing 8 kg, and I asked you to sample pumpkin and ash gourd, and ash gourd is weighing about 10 to 12 kg. So you normally the quantity required for analysis is about 1 to 2 kg. So what you do is instead of carrying, you have to carry this entire thing, heavy fruits into the lab. So what you will do is you cut the fruits in the field itself and narrow it down to 1 or 2 kg and bring it to lab. No, you are not allowed to do that. Individual fruits or vegetables subsampling in the field is not at all allowed. You have to bring the fruit as such. You are not allowed to cut or divide the fruit. And this is subsampling, and several criteria are there. I will discuss again in this slide. If you are going into a field, first divide the field into 100 imaginary grids. That means you divide the field into different areas and take sample from 1/10 of that area. That means 10 area. Divide the field into 100 imaginary grids and collect samples from 10 areas. The size of that grid and all you can decide on your own. That means once you are, before entering into the field, you scan the entire area and divide it into several areas. From that, randomly you choose 10 area and collect samples from that area. So whenever you are collecting samples, avoid taking samples from the beginning and end of the plot. The chance, the reason behind is that whenever you are going for a pesticide spray, in the beginning of the field, what will happen is that if the person has not washed the sprayer properly, after completing the earlier spraying, if he has not washed the sprayer properly, some quantity of the spray fluid will be remaining inside the sprayer, especially in the spray lands and all. So if you are spraying, starting the spraying, the initial area will be receiving the pesticide residues of the earlier sprayed pesticide, not the pesticide which the farmer is spraying now. Did you understand what I am telling? ഒരു കൃഷിക്കാരൻ സ്പ്രേ ചെയ്യാൻ പോകുന്നു, കുറ്റിയുടെ അകത്ത് നേരത്തെ സ്പ്രേ ചെയ്ത നന്നായിട്ട് കഴുകിയിട്ടില്ല എങ്കിൽ കുറ്റിയുടെ അകത്ത് പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ആ സ്പ്രേ ലാൻസിൽ ആ ട്യൂബിങ്ങിന്റെ അകത്തിരിക്കുന്നത് നേരത്തെ സ്പ്രേ ചെയ്തതിന്റെ ബാക്കിയുള്ള കീടനാശിനി ആയിരിക്കും. അപ്പൊ ആദ്യത്തെ സ്ഥലത്ത് വീഴുന്ന ഏതാ? പഴയ കീടനാശിനിയാണ്, ഇപ്പൊ അടിക്കാൻ പോകുന്ന കീടനാശിനി അല്ല. So in the initial area, chances are there the residue may be of a different pesticide. So avoid the beginning. And why avoid the last area? So the normal practice, if someone is doing a farming, they know all those things. So if some spray fluid is left in the spray tank, so what the farmer or the laborer will do is, at the end, if say 1 liter is remaining, he will remain in the area and continue to spray in that area and finish off the spray fluid. So normally what happens is that the last area may get more pesticide, and sometimes what will happen is that if the quantity of spray fluid is low, the farmer or the laborer will start working more quickly and try to cover that entire area so that he needs not fill the tank again. This all things happen normally in the field. അത് തീരാറാവുമ്പോ ചിലപ്പോ കീടനാശിനി ബാക്കിയുണ്ടാവും, ബാക്കിയുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അവിടെ കൂടുതൽ അടിക്കും. ഇനി കീടനാശിനി തീരാൻ പോവുകയാണെങ്കിലോ അവസാനത്തെ ഭാഗത്ത് ഓടിച്ചിട്ടൊന്ന് അടിച്ചു പോരും. So all these things happen in the field. So try to avoid sampling from the beginning and the end of the field. And sample the crop that constitutes the marketable produce. That is one critical thing. Say, what is the marketable produce of cabbage? How a farmer usually harvests cabbage? How cabbage is traded in the market, not how you purchase it from a local retailer. How it is harvested by a farmer and traded to a wholesaler. Cabbage or cauliflower, both are one and the same. Anyone? Why? No answers? എന്താടോ ആർക്കും അറിയില്ല അത് എങ്ങനെയാണ് ക്യാബേജ് ഹാർവെസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്ത് വരുന്നതെന്ന് ഹോൾസെയിലറുടെ അടുത്തേക്ക്? അഭിഷേക്, നോ ഐഡിയ? Vehicle load to load? No, I'm not asking like that. How it is harvested? Whether the cabbage is harvested with head alone or it will be along with Leaves. With leaves, yes, with leaf. So along with the head, surrounded with 4 or 5 leaves. Nowadays, when we are once it reaches the retail shop, the outer leaves must have been removed. But it is traded from the farmer's field along with the outer leaves. So we should sample from the field just like a farmer does, along with 4 or 5 outer leaves. We should not remove the outer leaves. So MRL is fixed as it is in trade. This is a trade limit. Remember, this is a trade limit. So that is one thing. And avoid undersized and diseased part, smaller size disease, because no farmer will market a diseased vegetable, a smaller vegetable, a malformed vegetable. Only good quality vegetables will be marketed. So avoid undersized and diseased vegetables. And whenever you are taking a sample from a field, don't try to clean it. Don't try to rub it with a cloth or tissue paper or anything. It will remove the surface residues. Handle it carefully. It should be packed in a perfect clean plastic bags or containers. And do not subsample in the field, that I have already told you. And the sampling tools and bags should be clean. Once the sampling is done, the sampled commodity should be stored in bags. It should be perfectly clean. It should not be used earlier. You can use polythene covers, but it should be neat, clean. You should be using it for the first time. It should not be reused, because if you are reusing it, the chances of contamination is more. And FSSAI has prescribed the quantity and the method of collection for each and every commodity. I'm not giving all, but this is for just for your understanding. Few examples. For large fruits such as papaya, palm fruits, guava, mango, citrus, etc., we have to have a minimum of 2 kg sample. Here you can see 2 kg sample, and this 2 kg sample should contain minimum of 12 fruits from 4 individual tree. I will repeat, we should have a minimum of 2 kg sample containing 12 fruits from 4 individual trees. That means from each tree we will have to take 3 fruits. Take the case of papaya. If we take a single papaya itself, it will make up 2 kg. You should not stop the sampling there. You have to take 12 fruits, 3 each from one tree. And this 4 tree, you have to mark it based on your earlier. Before entering the field, avoid the beginning and the end point, last area of the field. Identify randomly 4 trees, and from each tree, sample 3 fruits. And whatever be the weight, it should be there should be 12 fruits, and it should be more than 2 kg. And take another example. I will take that is say citrus fruits, say oranges. We may have very small oranges. You have taken 3 fruits each from 4 trees, and you got 12 fruits. And once you weighed it, it comes to only 1.5 kg. Then you have to sample more fruits. It should be above 2 kg. For grapes, we have to have 12 bunches from separate vines, and the total minimum quantity should be 1 kg. Pineapple, minimum weight is not prescribed. It should be minimum 12 fruits from 12 plants. Banana, we should have 24 fruits, and from each bunch, 2 fingers from top, middle, and bottom. That means from each bunch, there should be 6 fingers. There should be 6 fingers, 2 from top, 2 from middle, and 2 from the bottom part of the bunch. And so we should take such 6 fingers each from 4 bunches. Cabbage and cauliflower from 12 plants. Cucurbits and brinjal, 12 fruits from 12 separate plants, a minimum of 2 kg. Cereals, it is 1 kg. Tomato, depending upon the fruit size, the sampling size also differs. So this is with respect to sampling. And stopping it over here. We are going extremely slow because I want you to understand all those things, and that's why I'm going a bit slow. Any doubt in this?